Hello everyone, Find Me in the Lay here. Hope y'all are having a wonderful day so far. Well, it's that time of year again. Time to once again go back in time and talk about a Halloween Horror Nights event from the past. These are always some of my favorite videos to make, and I know you guys really enjoy these vids as well. Now, as you guys saw in the title, the year that I'll be covering this time is 2017. Now, some of you are probably wondering, why 2017? That's a pretty specific year. Well, 2017 is actually regarded, especially by veterans who've been going to the event for a while, as one of the worst years for HHN in Hollywood, if not the worst year. So I think the big question that I'm going to try to answer in this video is, was 2017 really that bad? Were people too harsh on the event that year, or does it still hold up, or in this case hold down, I guess, as one of the more poorly put together HHN events? Well, it's time we find that out together. So before we dive into the actual event, I want to talk about the announcement season and what IPs were announced, or should I say leaked. Some of the stuff that I'll be talking about, some of the details might be a little off because it has been like some time ago, so please bear with me. Early on in the year of 2017, there was a rumored lineup that circulated around the fan forums. Had to do a lot of digging on the internet to find it, but here it is. As you can see, the rumors included The Conjuring, The Shining, Evil Dead 2, American Horror Story, Insidious, Saw, and a mashup house of Blumhouse movies. It was also rumored that the tram would be filled with horror icons. Again, this came out around I want to say March of 2017, so there was a good chance that most, if not all of these rumors were not legit. But as it turns out, they were mostly right on the money. I remember the announcement season being pretty bad. They took their sweet time releasing each maze. It felt like they announced the first few houses once a month, and then they just announced the rest of it at the last week of August. I also specifically remember for Orlando's event, they had a countdown timer on their website, and when it finally went to 0, nothing really happened. I think they just announced some kind of sweepstakes, and I remember Orlando fans were so pissed. So yeah, the announcements for both coasts were just so awkward. But enough about the announcements, let's get into the actual event. Now 2017 actually marks the first time I purchased the Frequent Fear Pass, which allowed me to attend HHN for multiple nights. But I think in 2017 I only went 5 nights, if I remember correctly. But anyways, let's dive into my first night of going. Despite the weird announcements, I'm still excited, I'm still pumped, and I just couldn't wait to experience everything. So I actually want to cover the scare zones first, because looking back, they were kind of a telltale sign of the quality of 2017's event. There were only 3 zones that year, which were Halloween, Toxic Tunnel, and Urban Inferno. Halloween was in the New York area. The characters were cool looking, and some of the decor was nice, but unfortunately, there was a ton of construction going on in this area at the time. Not only were they remodeling Shrek 4D to turn it into DreamWorks, but they were also building the animation store. So because there wasn't much space in the area, the zone couldn't reach its full potential. Also, no fire towers, which was incredibly awkward. Then, there was the iconic Toxic Tunnel. This was the first year that they've had it, and I'm not gonna lie, I did not care for it at first. I guess I was just expecting more, but over time, I eventually grew to enjoy it. And finally, there's Urban Inferno in the Metro sets. This was hands down the best scare zone in 2017. The streets were super decked out, the characters looked really cool, and unlike the previous 2 zones, it overall felt so cohesive and complete. But yeah, that's about it. Only 3 scare zones. Nothing for Front Street and nothing at the front entrance. Yeah, overall, it just felt like they were cutting corners with the scare zones. But surely the mazes weren't like that, right? So according to the rumored lineup, we had American Horror Story set to return, and that rumor ended up being true. But unlike the previous version, which featured 3 seasons, 2017's maze only featured 1, which was the Roanoke season. I enjoyed the first American Horror Story maze, and I was looking forward to this one. I remember this house getting mixed reviews back then. Some said it was good, others said that it was kinda mid. Me personally, I liked this one. I think I might even prefer Roanoke over the first maze. I know you're probably looking at me like I'm crazy. You're probably thinking to yourself why do you prefer a maze that contains less seasons? And the season they decided to include was one of the weaker seasons of the show. Well, I think for me, it just mostly came down to the scares. As much as I liked the 2016 version, I thought it could have been a bit scarier. And I thought they really improved on the scares this time around. They felt a bit more intense. I also really enjoyed the set design. The rooms were quite big and super detailed. And I think the creative team focusing on just one season this time around actually worked out pretty well. Cause think about it, if you're working with 3 whole seasons of television to make into a maze with limited space and budget, there's only so much you can do, and like unfortunately you just had to exclude certain scenes and characters to adapt. But if the focus is only on one season, there's a lot more freedom and a lot less worry. Now they could pack in a lot more under the black maze tent. So yeah, I thought Roanoke was pretty good. Next up, we have The Shining, which was also rumored pretty early on. And this was a big deal back then because Stephen King has a reputation of always saying no to big companies that want to collab with him or just want to borrow the rights to his work. Well, it looked like they were finally able to get away with The Shining because they actually went to the Stanley Kubrick estate. I guess they were able to do that because Stephen King dislikes that adaptation of his book. But nonetheless, it's awesome that they were able to secure that classic film and finally make a maze out of it after so long. But was the maze worth the long wait? In my honest opinion, yes, I thought they delivered. There is one major issue that I had with it, but I'll get to that in a sec. First of all, I thought the sound design was immaculate. Just hearing the music in the iconic lines from the movie got me so excited and immersed. I was curious to see how they're going to bring the environments to life since the Overlook Hotel is pretty big, but I thought they did a decent job, especially considering that they built this in the Mummy Queue. All the rooms were decked out, from the chandeliers in the ceiling to the carpet-themed floors. It was so cool. The characters look very identical to the movie. I liked how they made masks for Jack Nicholson, cause his face is so unique and recognizable, and I assume it was pretty easy for the casting directors to hire Jack Nicholson's. The way they recreated the iconic scenes were really cool. I especially loved how they pulled off the Here's Johnny scene. All the scenes were cool. Well, except for maybe one. The bloody elevator. It's one of the most iconic images in not just the movie, but in all of horror. And how did they recreate it? A giant TV screen with scenes from the movie projected on it. I'm sorry, but that was just flat out unacceptable. What a cheap way to handle that scene. The screen looked so bad too. It looked like it was stretched out or distorted, and the color scheme of the elevator didn't fit with the color scheme of the rest of the room. There was actual fake blood in the room, but it was only a tiny puddle. I know Universal is capable of doing better, but outside of that one bad scene, everything else in The Shining was handled very well. I think for the most part, Universal did the film justice. Another big headliner for 2017 was Saw, which again was rumored earlier that year. The maze was covering the first several movies leading up to Jigsaw, I think? Yeah, because I remember they were promoting Jigsaw that year. Now, Saw for me is interesting because it's one of those cases where my thoughts and opinion on a maze actually change well after it was at the event. At first, it was one of my least favorites of that year, and maybe even on my bottom 10 of all time. But then I actually watched all the Saw movies for the very first time. And then I watched the POV walkthroughs of the Saw maze on YouTube to see if it really was as bad as I remembered. And looking at it now, I think I was a little too harsh on Saw. It's still not a great maze, but it's not the worst maze ever. You know what I mean? I think the main issue I have with Saw that still hasn't changed no matter what is that most of the maze is just us guests watching people get tortured, and because of that there weren't a whole lot of actual jump scares, at least compared to the other mazes. And the jump scares we do get are all from the same character. It would have been cool if we saw people trying to get out of their traps and then they unexpectedly jump out at us as they're finally escaping the trap. That would have been cool. And also the pig characters all looked the same, and you couldn't tell who was under the mask. Was it John Kramer himself? Was it Amanda? Was it Hoffman? Was it a mix of all of them? We don't know. They were all just generic looking piggy dudes. One thing I did come to appreciate were the traps they decided to incorporate. I like how in the first room that you walk into, you see Jigsaw's first trap, the one with the kitchen knives on the guy's face. Then of course you see the iconic reverse bear trap with Amanda, and then there's also the pendulum trap, which was Hoffman's first trap. The water tank with Strom, who is kind of a big character in 2 of the movies. You also have Jigsaw's ex-wife here, who meets her demise with the reverse bear trap. And of course, you gotta include the bathroom, which, by the way, I think was the worst smelling room in all of my years of going to HHN, like hands down. Yes, even worse than Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw. Oh god, it was so disgusting.
No, seriously, why does it smell like caca and wee-wees in here?
They also had what I call the chum bucket trap from Jigsaw, and I remember in that scene there were giant buzzsaws coming out of the walls, which even back then I thought was pretty cool. It made guests feel like they were part of a saw trap themselves. Wish there were more interactive scenes like this in the maze. So looking back after all these years and having seen all the movies, the Saw maze was not terrible, but still kind of mediocre. Something that the rumors also stated was Evil Dead 2 being a maze. It wasn't quite exactly that. Instead, what we got was a maze based on Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV show. Now, I could be misremembering, but back then I think I read somewhere that the maze was originally going to include elements from both the show and the first two movies. But I think while Universal was in the middle of designing the maze, the license holders were just like, nah, let's make it entirely based on the show. So that kind of like messed them up a little bit. Now, I have no idea if all that is like actually true, but if it is, that would explain a lot, because this maze was a massive dud. First of all, I think they did a poor job adapting the show. It's a horror comedy with tons of gore, but the maze wasn't really funny, and there actually wasn't even any gory either. Yeah, nothing too bloody. Also, the Bruce Campbell masks look so weird. And it's weird because like they also made masks for the Jack Nicholson character, and those looked fine, but for some reason Ash looked weird. Like it didn't really look like Bruce Campbell. One thing I will praise about this house is that the scares are actually pretty decent. I remember getting a couple good scares in that maze. But yeah, there's not much else I could say about Ash vs. Evil Dead. Mainly because the maze didn't really give us anything. The whole house was just so boring because it felt so bare bones. It truly did feel like they removed scenes during the design process and replaced it with, just nothing. We were just walking in total darkness for half the maze. What do I mean by that? Well, that's something I'm actually not going to elaborate on until later in the video. But for now, let's talk about our next maze, the Horrors of Blumhouse, which again was already rumored early in the year. This is basically a compilation house of different Blumhouse movies, and this was actually the very first time they had this concept because, as we all know, they made more mazes and even a couple of terror trams. The movies they chose to represent are The Purge, Happy Death Day, and Sinister. I never liked The Purge, and every time it appears at Horror Nights, I dislike it more and more. I've only seen Sinister once, and I remember it being slightly overrated, and I think Happy Death Day came out like a month or two after opening weekend, so obviously I haven't seen it yet at that time. Yeah, a very strange collection of Blumhouse movies, at least for me. The maze opens up with The Purge, and they actually built this section at the Universal Plaza, so it was like an outdoor mini maze slash scare zone hybrid, which I actually thought was pretty fitting for The Purge. Then we go inside the Parisian courtyard space, and the facade is pretty cool. It's like a retro movie theater. We then enter Happy Death Day, and this section wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. It was kind of like a nothing burger. But I guess it's because the movie hadn't come out yet at the time and they didn't want to spoil anything, so it did feel like they were holding back. And finally, there's Sinister, which is the section I was most disappointed with. When you think about Sinister, you think about scenes like the family getting hung on the tree, and the pool scene, and the lawnmower scene. But what did Universal bring to life? The ending of the first movie, and the rat scene from part 2. And then that's it. Yeah, fans of the Sinister movie were not happy that most of the section was based on the second movie. A couple of good Bagul scares here and there, but outside of that, the Sinister section was pretty underwhelming. Overall, Horrors of Blumhouse Volume 1 was the pinnacle of mid. A lot about this maze left me very unimpressed. Another Blumhouse movie that was featured as a maze was Insidious Beyond the Further. This was my second experience with Insidious at HHN, and this maze was based on the fourth movie, which is the one with the key demon. The previous version of Insidious instantly became one of my all-time favorite mazes, so I was super excited to revisit this franchise and was curious to see a sneak peek of Insidious 4. And I gotta be honest, I was slightly let down by it. Now that might be a hot take because I remember this one being a fan favorite back in 2017, but I didn't think it was all that great. First of all, there were a lot of rooms where nothing was really happening. It was just us guests looking at some scary stuff happening as opposed to scary characters like scaring us. Kind of a similar situation with Saw, although not as egregious as Saw. And I noticed there were a lot of moments and characters in the maze that aren't even featured in the movie that it's based on. Pretty sure it's because those characters ended up in the deleted scenes. One thing I'm kind of mixed on is the inclusion of the other movies. It was cool seeing all the other fan favorite characters from the first 3 movies make an appearance again here in this maze, but I don't know, I feel like it would have been better off if they just entirely focused on the 4th movie. The set design was interesting, but nothing too amazing. The characters looked cool, but I didn't really find the maze to be all that scary. The scares weren't bad, but none of the scenes, except for one, were as intense as the 2015 version. The one scene that is an exception is the final scare, where there were like not 1, not 2, but 5 different ghosts jump out at you without any moment to breathe. That was definitely one of the scariest moments I've ever experienced in all of my years of going to HHN. But outside of that crazy ending, nothing was really all that memorable about Beyond the Further. The final maze that was in the rumored lineup is The Conjuring. And of course, the final maze I'll be talking about in this video is Titans of Terror? Question mark, exclamation point? Yeah, one of the biggest rumors of 2017 was that we were supposed to get The Conjuring as a maze, but the license got pulled at almost the last minute. None of the inside sources really knew exactly what happened. Maybe it had something to do with the lawsuit that was going around at the time. But anyway, Universal had only a little bit of time to come up with a replacement. Thankfully, they already had the rights to Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface that year, so they decided to make a Titans of Terror maze. I love those characters, but I was still worried about the maze since it was a supposed last minute replacement. But of course, I still had hope that it would at least be a fun experience. And that's exactly what Titans of Terror was. It was so much fun. Basically, the premise is that a kid is watching a horror movie triple feature, which is hosted by this horror host, which looks awfully familiar. Anyways, the triple feature consists of Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The kid then has a dream that we of course enter. This is where we encounter the Titans of Terror. The premise alone is so awesome. The first room that you walk into, which is what you're seeing right now, is so heartwarming and relatable too, because we were definitely this kid at some point in our childhood. I thought the scares and sets were so cool. My favorite section is probably Freddy Krueger's. The Jason section was low-key kinda underwhelming, which sucks because he's my personal favorite of the 3. Leatherface had a cool section, a lot of classic Texas Chainsaw gags here. A lot of people didn't like the fact that they reused a lot of props from Freddy vs. Jason and Texas Chainsaw, but I honestly didn't mind it. It made sense why we see similar props and set pieces, and I'll cut them some slack since they didn't have much time to come up with something new. But yeah, Titans of Terror was pretty awesome, especially considering it was supposed to be something else. And those are all the mazes. Now, let's finally... Oh, right. Walking Dead was always fun, I guess. Not really exciting, though. Not relevant. Yeah. Anyways, final thing I want to talk about is the Terror Tram, which is also themed to the Titans of Terror. Again, it featured Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface, but the tram was actually hosted by Chucky. So on paper, 4 horror icons invading the Universal backlot sounds like the greatest Terror Tram ever, right? But what if I told you guys that this is actually one of my least favorite Terror Trams? Yeah. First of all, the story they set up is kinda lazy. It explains what Chucky is doing here, but it doesn't explain why the other 3 are in the backlot. Chucky says that he learned a new voodoo spell, and now anyone can be Chucky. So you would think he would appear a lot throughout the attraction, right? He only comes out once, at the opening with the Chainsaw Troupe. The Bates Motel turns into the Crystal Lake Motel, and we see Jason doing his thing, and camp counselors dying. Like I said, I'm a big Jason fan, so I enjoyed this section. The wooden fence section had Texas Chainsaw characters, which, not gonna lie, felt kinda random. The War of the Worlds set was kinda cool, cause it was filled with a bunch of Freddys in different outfits, but that's literally all they had here, which to me wasn't enough. The attraction ends with more Texas Chainsaw, and it's more or less the same old Texas Chainsaw stuff that we've seen a bunch of times at this point, and that's the end. We hop back on the tram, and straight up, with absolutely no shame, Chucky hijacks the tram, and he says that he'll kill us all unless we let him promote his movies.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
When they announced that Chucky was going to be a part of the Terror Tram, I was expecting him to play a big part of the whole thing. It would have been so cool if, say, he was helping Jason kill people, or maybe even have Freddy dressed up in a good guy costume. So many cool things they could have done here, but he's literally only here just to shamelessly plug in his silly little Blu-ray collection. Man, what a slap in the face, bruh. Like I said, so shameless. 0 out of 10. And those are all of the attractions. Now I'm gonna... Oh.
Boy, if you don't get...
Anyways, that is the entire event of HHN 2017. Now, this is the part of the video where I quickly rank the mazes from worst to best, score the Terror Tram, grade the scare zones, all that jazz. But first, I gotta address this. One of the main reasons why 2017 is regarded by many as one of the worst years for Horror Nights is that most of the mazes, maybe even all of them, have one thing in common. They all have one big glaring issue, which is black walls. Now, in case you're like a newer HHN fan and you're not like a hardcore Horror Nights nerd like a lot of us, black walls are basically something that creative director John Murdy sometimes likes to implement in his mazes, and as the name implies, they are dark rooms and hallways where the walls are painted completely black and there's no theming in these rooms. Sometimes they're just used to like transition from one scene to the next, other times they'll actually have scare actors coming out of boo holes. Now, black walls have basically become a meme in the HHN community because nobody likes them. And you're probably wondering, why is that? What's so wrong with these black walls? Think about this. One of the things that makes HHN stand out from other Halloween events is the movie quality production value from Universal Studios. So imagine getting so lost in the world of whatever house you're experiencing, only for the vibes to come at a screeching halt because you walk into a room with absolutely no theming. It just feels lazy and it kind of ruins the pacing of the maze. So as you can imagine, HHN fans were not happy when they discovered that 2017's mazes were just riddled with these black walls. I did hear rumors that they apparently were a lot of budget cuts for 2017, and if that was the case, then it clearly showed. It literally felt like they designed a maze and then they deleted a lot of scenes like right before construction. I'm not kidding when I say this, every single maze in 2017 had them. I hinted at this earlier, but I think the biggest offender is Ash vs Evil Dead. Literally half of the maze was nothing but black walls. So yeah, the mazes felt so incomplete at times, which was very unfortunate. But anyways, let's quickly rank these mazes. Number 7 is Ash vs Evil Dead. The Bruce Campbell masks made Ash look scarier than the Deadites. It also wasn't funny, it wasn't gory, and half the time nothing was really happening. Number 6 is Saw. If you're a fan of the movies, you would have had fun recognizing the different traps, but other than that, it was repetitive and kind of boring at times. Number 5 is Horrors of Blumhouse. This maze and Saw are actually like neck and neck for me. They're both at that same level of mid, but I'm giving Blumhouse a slight edge only because the scares are a bit more exciting in that maze. Number 4 is Insidious. The ending was scary as hell, and some of the stuff from Insidious 4 was interesting to look at, but other than that, there wasn't really anything too memorable here. Number 3 is American Horror Story. Hot take, but I enjoyed this better than the previous American Horror Story, mainly because the scares hit pretty hard and the set design really impressed me. Number 2 is The Shining. Only reason it's not at number 1, besides the black walls, is that cheap elevator. Other than that, it was a great adaptation of the movie. It was so cool. And number 1 is Titans of Terror. Super fun. Definitely the most fun I've had in 2017. That's the maze ranking. Let's move on to Terror Tram. It felt lazy. It felt like they just threw in the Titans of Terror just because they were popular in 2016. And the way they incorporated Chucky was just so corny. This is like bottom 2 Terror Tram for me. And it ain't number 2. I'll cut the scares on some slack because a lot of weird stuff was going on with the layout of the park, so there was only so much they could have done. Here are the grades that I would give them. And finally, if I were to give an overall score to Halloween Horror Nights 2017, it would probably be a 5.5 out of 10. Now that may seem harsh, but I feel like this is an appropriate score. I can definitely understand why this is a lot of people's least favorite year for HHN. When my favorite maze is a replacement for a scrapped maze, that's how you know something went wrong. I don't want to end the video on a downer note, so I'll say this to wrap it up. Just because I and many others had issues with HHN 2017, that doesn't mean we hated the event. I did not make this video with the intention of discrediting or throwing jabs at the hard-working crew that poured their heart and soul into making this event. Nobody ever goes out of their way to make a bad product. It's just that sometimes stuff happens and not everything goes according to plan. For me, even when I recognize that attractions aren't the greatest and aren't up to par with past attractions, I think I'm literally just incapable of not having fun at Halloween Horror Nights. They could have a Bluey maze, an Adam Sandler scare zone, and a Minecraft terror tram hosted by Jack Black, all filled to the brim with black walls, and I would still have a blast at HHN. Like I said, the creative team and construction crew work so hard to put everything together, and the scare actors always do a phenomenal job at doing what they do. They can definitely make the most out of even the lamest attractions. So yeah, 2017 might be one of the worst years for Horror Nights in Hollywood, but I say that without hyperbole because it's not the worst thing ever. And that's gonna be it for today's video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click the like button. If you want to see more content like this now that Halloween Horror Nights is just so close to getting started, go ahead and click the subscribe button. Also, let me know down in the comments, have you attended HHN 2017? If so, let me know about your experience down in the comments. If you stuck around to the very end of the video, thank you so much for watching, and until then, see you all in the fog.